My name is Ed Allen. I live here in Sun City. Moved into Sun City West when I retired back in 1997 and have been active in the Historical Society, now the Del Webb Sun Cities Museum, for 20 plus years. When we moved into Sun City West, we looked for volunteer activities, and the visitor center was new. So we went over there, and it was fun talking to people about this community. They had a brochure that they gave out, and it had been left to them by Del Webb Development Company, and we ran out of them. And it was a very expensive brochure. Besides, we needed something smaller to put in a number 10 envelope to send to people that inquired about Sun City West. So I said, well, I can do that, because my background was in writing and communications. And I took on the project, went looking for pictures, and was told, oh, we sent Del Webb people, so we gave all our pictures to the Sun Cities Area Historical Society. I said, oh, where's that? And that brought me over here, and sure enough, they had files of pictures and clippings and so on. So I did the brochure, and while I was over here picking out pictures from time to time, there was a docent by the name of Phyllis Street, and she was also a member of our church, so I'd see her on Sunday. And every now and then we'd bump into one another. She'd remind me that the 25th anniversary of Sun City West was coming up in a couple of years, and somebody ought to write the history of that. Okay, I heard that enough times that I finally volunteered. And what I thought would be adequate would be 24-page brochure to tell 25 years of history, piece of cake. So I no sooner said yes, and I was given this book, Jubilee, and told this was what was done for the 25th anniversary of Sun City, and we'd like one just like it. And if I remember right, this is 292 pages. So, okay, I ran an article in the local paper, and 20 people showed up that were interested in history, volunteering to work on this project. We took the table of contents from Jubilee and said, well, here's our outline, and if we need to, we can add to it. And different people had different backgrounds. There were 2 realtors in the group. They said, well, we'll handle housing. There was a woman who had been on the hospital auxiliary for years. She said, oh, I know the hospital history, I'll gather that. And so these people went about gathering clippings and articles and writing up what they had learned, gave it all to me. I had a lot of help. It was fun. I mean, working with this committee, we met at Briarwood Country Club. Briarwood provided free coffee, and we'd share stories that people had collected, and everybody just had a great time listening to these stories that were being turned in to be included in the book. So it was a good experience. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And we commuted between here and Wisconsin for 21 years. So when we go back to Wisconsin in the summer, then I'd take this material and write it. And it took us about 2 years to complete the project, but we had it done January 1, 2003, when they had all the festivities for the 25th year of Sun City West. Sun City West Silver Celebration. So that's where I got started. Well, the need was obvious. This place was a historical society. The front bedroom over here had filing cabinets along one wall and a table in the center. And the docents would sit at that table, clipping articles from magazines, pasting them onto pasting them onto a white piece of paper, cutting out the heading of, the date and the name of the paper, pasting that at the top. And just screamed for, hey, there's so much more we could do with this. And so I was on the board. I got a couple other people that I had worked with me on the history book and who were really interested in history. One of them was Jill Ruck, our cookie lady over here. But we had a really good working relationship. She joined the board here, as well as a friend of hers, David Verbal. David was a very handy guy. He did the lighting in that room over there. This he didn't do, but he could build cabinets, he could do lighting, he could do plumbing, he could do anything. Just a great addition. So these two went to the Arizona Historical Museum over with at Tempe or Phoenix, somewhere on the east side. And while they were there, they encountered some people who were building an exhibit, and they got to talking with them. And they told them about our museum, and they said, "Oh, we'd like to see that." So they came out. Dave and Joe asked me to join them. We sat at a table in the next room and talked about exhibits. And then they got up and said, "Well, let's walk around here and take a look." So I remember the man coming in through that door behind me, and he looked at this room and he said, "Well, the first thing we're going to do is put it on the diagonal, and we'll make this over here a 1960s living room, like it might have looked like when people came into the model home. And then this part over here will tell the story of the opening of Sun City in 1960. Because it was, smash weekend, 100,000 people in a weekend, 200 and some homes sold in one weekend. And they said, and it'd be nice if you could get Del Webb to welcome people. So one Sunday morning in church, I looked across the church and this tall guy came in. I thought, boy, he looks a lot like Del Webb. And after the service, I went over and introduced myself. His name was Ted Brock, and I told him I was with this museum and we were looking for a look-alike for Del Webb. And I said, "You're his height. Would you mind posing for a picture for him?" And he was kind of taken back by this, but his wife thought, "Oh, I think the word she used was, it'll be a hoot." So he agreed, and the photographer for Theater West took his picture, and it turned out the photographer's son out in California was a graphic artist, so we'd given him pictures of Del Webb in a similar pose, and so he just married Del Webb's head and hat, or no hat, to the body of Del Webb, and Del Webb's been there greeting visitors ever since. In those days, I was kind of on my own. We didn't have any budget for exhibits, so I did the work. I enlarged photos, and I wrote captions, and I got poster board and colored paper, and did this in my kitchen. And I had a ball doing it with spray glue. And those initial exhibits held up for several years, but then they began to peel. And there's one in there that's the original, from the original bit that I did. And so we finally got a grant and then had a professional graphic designer take what I had and convert it into large panels that are printed, and so much more permanent. And we expanded the room slightly. But in that room, it was, while I had a lot of pictures of Del Webb in our files, and then there was a biography that had been written about him, a lot of pictures in it. So we pulled all that together. About half of the filing cabinet drawers were empty, so we got rid of a lot of filing cabinets, and then began with that room, which was obviously going to be about Del Webb. Natural to talk about him and his involvement with this, but he's much more than Sun City, and so we told the story of that. But Webb would leave stuff behind. If they moved to a new office someplace, Webb would just walk out and go to the new office. And so R.H. Johnson would go in there and, well, this book was his, this is. So as a result of that, Marjorie had several cartons of material that was Webb. And the most important thing that we found in this memorabilia was a pocket diary. Webb used to carry a pocket notebook, and each day he'd write what he did and his expenses. So there were like one a month, and there was a whole big cabinet of them. We got to thinking, I bet we could look in there and we could find out when he married, where did they go on their honeymoon? And so we looked through them and found married, and that's on display in there. Because what we found out was there was no honeymoon. he was at work the next day. But all that's documented thanks to finding this memorabilia. There are other things that were his, a hard hat and briefcase and things. But thanks to Marjorie, we got all that. thinking about this interview, I recalled that there's one exhibit about Del Webb that I never did. I'd always intended to add, but the room is full, so where would I put it? And the exhibit would be on Del Webb's involvement with motion pictures. You know, he got all this business in Las Vegas and hotels and shopping centers and retirement communities, but he also was involved in investing in motion pictures. And the first one is covered in the biography that was written. It took place shortly after World War II in what would that be, 46, when he was golfing with, I think it was Bing Crosby, and Crosby brought along a couple of guests, and the foursome was golfing. And one of these was a screenwriter. And after their golf, they went to the clubhouse, and Webb sat at a table, played some cards with some buddies of his, and these other people huddled over in a corner and were talking business. And finally, Crosby, I think it was, hollered across to him, "Hey, Webb, why don't you invest in this motion picture so we can do it right?" And Webb said, "Well, how much do you need?" And they huddled and they said, $100,000 will do it. Webb wrote out a check for $100,000, went on playing his cards. That movie was a movie about John L. Sullivan, the great John L., and it was a tremendous success. Of course, you were coming out of the Warriors, you know, there weren't a lot of movies, but anyway, it was well done, and it was a success. It's kind of like footage that we have of some old programs on TV that mentioned Sun City. There was a program called The Millionaires. I think Mel Griffith was the moderator. I'm not sure of that. But he interviewed Webb. And that interview, finding that and listening to it, led to the clip that we have here. If you're interested in hearing Del Webb speak, you press that little button that's on the cabinet there, and you'll hear him tell you about Sun City.
The most satisfying thing that I ever accomplished in my life was the development of these Sun Cities. Wherever I go out there, and some lady will come up to me and put her arms around me and says, "Oh, Mr. Webb, you've saved my life, mine and my husband." Somebody will come up to me and she says, "You know what this means to me? We lived in Chicago, never had a country club life, and now we're just living here like kings."
And in this he says, "You know, I think the most satisfying thing I've ever done with Sun City, of all the things that this man did, you know, most satisfying was Sun City." I think that Cookie Lady is probably the most photographed woman in Sun City. Lots of people take their picture with her. But we, having done this and having this 1960-ish kitchen, the idea was born, well, why don't we have a 1960s housewife in here greeting people? And so we put a call out, tried to get some volunteers from one of the docents or somebody else that might be interested, and nobody. So I finally said to Joe, "You're it, Joe. You're just the right person." In the movie that we showed in the theater at that time called In the Beginning, which had been prepared back in the 60s, and that was distributed nationwide to movie theaters, and they played it, I guess, in between main shows. In that movie, the couple that was the featured couple had a Corvair. And so somebody, I don't know who, came up with the idea, you know, it'd be neat if we'd have a Corvair out here. Well, obviously having a car, there's a lot of upkeep, even if you don't drive the blooming thing, it gets dirty pretty fast. So we came up with this idea of the mural. And this muralist, somehow or other, appeared. I don't remember exactly where he came from, but he volunteered to do it. And he painted a full-size red on the wall here. There were some old-timers of the museum that, do we really want to do that? That's not kind of how this building looked. And after a few years, we got the golf carts and the mural got painted over, so it went away. Okay, well that's a room that when you walk up the driveway, you see it sticking out from the side of the building. It's a 10 foot by 10 foot room that was a building that was put along Grand Avenue in 1959 when the construction was going on here. Houses were being built, golf course being formed, and obviously people were curious. So they put a salesman out there in this little shed, and as they'd stop, say, hey, what's going on here? He'd tell them about it, give them some kind of brochure and all that. And by the time opening day came, he had 400 some good solid leads of people who really wanted to locate here. So that then, once they had this place open, they had better sales quarters built. They needed more than one salesman. And at one time it was with the model homes as a refreshment stand, and then we made it into the theater. It was the Sundome Junior Theater. Well, it was the theater first, and then when the Sundome was torn down, and we did an exhibit in there in the Sundome, got some chairs from the Sundome, then it became Sundome Junior Theater, Arizona's smallest theater. Well, the building was being torn down, and it was again David, the scrounger handyman, who was, I think, the instigator of it, and our board president at that time, he and another man, three of them, got permission, obviously, to go in there, but there were no lights, it was pitch dark, so they had to work by flashlights to unanchor these chairs from the floor. And they got 6 for us. I think David took 2 or 3 more for himself. He never did figure out what to do with them. They were remarkable people. Each one had a great story to tell. And I'm so glad I was able to capture some of that and put it in the book, but more importantly, put it in displays, exhibits, and into talks, which we gave over the years to various clubs and organizations in Sun City and Sun City West, Grand, Western community here.